Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We will get started in just about a minute. We still have some people logging on, and we want to give them a chance to get signed in. So another minute, and we will get going. Meanwhile, I do have the captioning link. I will send that to your chat boxes right now. So if you want captions, go into your chat box. If you don't see the chat box, look to the upper right-hand side of your screen. There should be an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, the chat box will open up and you can see the captioning link and click on that to open the live captions. And again, we'll get started in just a minute here. To those of you who just joined, in your chat box, we do have the link for the live captions, and we'll share that again in a minute. And it looks like the logging in is slowing down, so we'll just give a few more seconds and then we will go ahead and start. All right, looks like we're ready to go. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kim Brown. I'm with the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, Transition and Employment Projects, and with the Montana Deaf-Blind Project. And Teresa Baldry and I will be your moderators for today. Live captioning is available for today's session. To access the captions, open the captioning link, which I've posted in our chat box, and you want to open that in a new browser window. And Susan, if you want to go ahead and advance one slide, we'll have the, oh, Susan's frozen there. There you are. Can you move us forward one slide, please, Susan?
You're talking. I can't hear you. Are you talking?
I am. I'm asking if you could move us forward one slide, please.
Because I could not hear that. I apologize. I couldn't hear anything.
I'm sorry. I hope others can hear me.
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So here is the captioning link as well. You do want to open that in a new browser window and then position the window to sit directly above you can move it around, I'm sorry. So you'll want to have your GoToWebinar window open and also your captioning window open. And just know that captions scroll up from the bottom, so you'll want to adjust your screen accordingly. Susan, I'm wondering, can you hear me now okay? It's still frozen there. Okay, but I do see the captioners are moving us forward, so it looks like folks can hear me. If you cannot, please let me know. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, which is funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, and through a contract with Children's Special Health Services at the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements shared in the presentation do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the sponsoring departments. All attendees are currently muted. If you want to ask the presenter a question or make a comment, feel free at any time to type your question or comment into the chat box. And note that only you, the moderator, and the presenter will be able to see what you've typed into the chat box. If you don't see the chat or the question box on your screen, look to the upper right-hand side of your screen. There should be an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it will open your dashboard, and one of the options is questions or chat. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction Renewal Unit when you registered, those will be emailed to you after the webinar, and it can take up to a couple of weeks for us to get those out. Please note that you do have to have pre-registered and requested the OPI credit in order to receive that. There is a certificate of attendance available, and the link for that certificate of attendance will be included in a follow-up email that you receive from GoToWebinar tomorrow. Today's session is being recorded for the Montana Deaf-Blind Project and Transition and Employment Project's resource libraries, and by participating in the webinar, you grant permission for any chats and/or questions that you submit through the webinar platform to be recorded. The video for today's webinar will be posted to our training archives pages, and I will put both of those website addresses or URLs into the chat box a little bit later during the webinar. The handouts for today's session are also available, or will be available, actually they are already available, on both of those websites, and they're available through the handouts tab on your GoToWebinar dashboard. And we do have 5 handouts today from our presenter. There's a 6th handout which we were not able to load to GoToWebinar, but it is loaded to our websites as well. So you should be able to access the handouts in a couple of different ways. We do have a short evaluation that we really hope that you will fill out for us. It's only 8 questions, I think, and I will send you the link to that evaluation in the chat box later during today's webinar. The link will also be in the follow-up email that you receive from GoToWebinar about an hour after today's session ends. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Ellen Condon for a few words about the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, and then to Teresa Baldry for how and who to refer to the project. Ellen?
Thank you, Kim. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Condon. I'm the project co-director along with Kim Brown. And like Kim said, the Montana Deaf-Blind Project is federally funded. We provide technical assistance to improve services and educational outcomes of children who have a dual sensory loss, so a combined vision and hearing loss, ages birth through high school exit. And we serve students who are in Montana. I'm happy to see we've got many of our fellow projects from around the country joining us today. There's a really large deaf-blind network, so if you're looking for information on deaf-blindness to serve students in Montana, we can get access to information, and if we don't have it, we frequently reach out to our other states' projects. Our project strives to increase awareness and understanding of dual sensory loss in children and how that impacts their development, learning, and overall access to information. So we're really excited to hear Susan's information today as we really look to increase our identification of younger students with a dual sensory loss. And we'll hear from Susan why that's really important to start as early as possible. So I'm going to turn this over to our project coordinator, Teresa Baldry, and she'll tell you how to refer students.
Thank you, Ellen, and welcome everyone today. In an effort to improve how to connect with us and who to refer, we have a couple tools listed on our homepage. First, there is an FAQ, frequently asked questions, and we have a Montana Deaf-Blind Project referral checklist. Both of these can be found just under the first video about the Rural Institute. Additionally, in reaching out to us, always at the bottom of our homepage and any of our pages is a blue band. And within that blue band, we have the multiple ways that you can connect with us. There's a phone number listed for voice message, fax, email, a little box for contact information that you can drop anything in there that you need to reach out to us in regard to. And lastly, we have a group within Facebook for the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, and we share information through that regularly. So please reach out if there's a way that we can assist you. If you have questions, please refer to those 2 forms on our website, and I'll turn it back to Kim.
Thank you, Teresa. And with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce and thank our speaker today. We are so excited to have back with us Dr. Susan M. Bashinski. She is a professor of special education and is currently serving as the interim dean of the Missouri Western State University Graduate School. Susan has more than 40 years of experience working with learners who experience multiple disabilities, including deaf-blindness and charge syndrome. Throughout her career, Susan's research interests and areas of expertise include early communication, gestural communication and language development, augmentative communication, and cochlear implants for learners who experience deaf-blindness. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for the kind and generous introduction. I appreciate Kim's remarks when she says that I have been working in this field for more than 40 years. It's a very kind way of saying she's old and she's done this for a long time. So I will share with you my opinions. I will share with you what I know about research, and I will share with you my experiences, and I'll try to be clear, cross fingers, that I'll differentiate those things. When I'm telling you something that I've read from a published article as research findings versus what I just believe to be true in my gut, I will try to clean that up for you so you'll know and can make your own decisions about things. So let's get going here. This is a quick agenda. I'm not going to read it to you. Every one of you can read either on the screen or through other materials provided. I think you'll see as you glance through the agenda, there really is a variety of topics that all are associated with early identification, why early ID is so critical, what's the rationale, what's the impact of dual sensory loss with an infant, with a toddler, with a very young child. Are there certain risk factors for which we can watch? What are the red flags for which we should watch? And then how in the world do we engage in assessment activities with this population of kiddos whom we think might have dual sensory losses to get some assessment evaluation results and to get a referral made and to get supports in place so they don't lose more time. We'll focus primarily on informal, or what I will talk about as observational assessment. I think that's our best ticket. But I'll share with you a couple of formal assessment instruments that I've used through the years. And I've got some resources for you that I will share as well. In the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel, you will find 5 different electronic documents. One of them is this actual slideshow, so you'll be able to refer back to it should you care to do that. The second one is the action plan, and I've actually put SMB action plan. I would hope you might have printed that, or you might print it now, you might download it now. My hope for today is that by the time the next hour and 15 minutes is gone, you will have been able to make at least one note on that action plan of something that you haven't thought about before, or something that you haven't tried before, that you go, hey, when I'm working with Mark's family, I could suggest they do X. Or the next time I go to observe Sally, I'm going to look for Y. I hope there's something new. And I'm projecting my own weaknesses onto you all, and you say, that's not fair. I say, okay, you're right. But I know when I attend professional development, if I get a new idea, if I don't write it down, by the time I get back into my groove, into my routine, into my practice, I don't remember. So I hope you'll find something and take advantage of the action planning form. I'm really curious to know who's here with us today. So Kim, if you could launch the first poll, I would sure appreciate that. If you would choose what applies to you, parent, guardian, or a very close family member, if you're a paraeducator, if you're a teacher of any flavor, general ed, special ed, TVI, hard of hearing, if you're any related service provider, and then another category, and if you're an administrator, an audiologist, if you're somebody that's not listed on here, please don't be offended. GoToMeeting only allows us to have 5 options. And so put your role in the chat if you would do that, just so I have some idea of who's here, because I can't see you and I can't see your names. So And Kim, when you think the poll is answered by the majority of folks, we could go ahead and display the results, if you would, please.
Okay, and it looks like we're at about 75%, so we'll give another 10 seconds or so, give folks a chance to mark the boxes.
Then we need a drum roll or something, right?
Can you make the drum roll noise? This is Kim.
No, I can make the drum sign. There, I don't know.
Okay, well, that looks good. It looks like the voting has stopped, so I will close the poll and share the results.
Okay. 4% family members. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. Lots of teachers, an equal number of related services providers. That's awesome. Kim, if you're staring at the chat, I don't need specific numbers, but could you give me, please, an example, like who are the others? We got 27%, about a quarter of the people are other roles.
And I'm going to ask Teresa for that because I know she's been watching closely.
Sorry, I said the wrong name. I apologize. I'm just curious.
No worries, here to support. So this is Teresa, and we have several members of our partner groups through the Deaf-Blind Network, and I'm thrilled to see all their names.
Excellent.
Because it's a small group of people and we get to know each other. But we also have individuals who've identified themselves as early intervention teachers, or maybe support specialists with the early intervention programs throughout our state and other states, just to feel listed as others.
Awesome, fantastic, thank you. I appreciate that information, I do. I will try to gear some of my remarks to those groups. Early interventionists, I hope that you can find something valuable here. You may know more about many of these topics than I do, so feel free to post your comments in the chat. Periodically, I will stop and say, Teresa, what questions do we have? And we'll have time for questions as well as at the end, but we will have interspersed question times as well. And now I'm trying to advance the slides and they won't move. Okay. Just real quickly, I think most of you on here know this, that a child who experiences deaf-blindness is not the same as a child with a hearing loss who can't see very well, or a child with a vision loss who can't hear very well. Deaf-blindness in and of itself is a unique disability. It is a complex disability. There's not an additive kind of result with vision loss plus hearing loss. It really is an exponential loss, and that is magnified the more serious or the more severe the vision and or hearing losses are. And we just want, it's just like, you all know that, so I'm trying to pull it out of the back of your brains and bring it to the front of your brains. Why a webinar on early identification? It's critical. You know it's critical. We all know it's critical. I've just pulled a few quotes off the website of the National Center on Deaf-Blindness, that the earliest years of a child's life have profound influence on the ability of that child to learn, to interact with other people for the rest of her life. And I think it's especially true for kids, young children with deaf-blindness, because the physical, communication, cognitive, social, emotional, and developmental domains are really integrated. And in infancy and in the years of toddlerhood, they are so integrated with one another that it's hard to break them out and say, well, what's sensory and what's cognitive and what's motor, because they all integrate. And that's why we need so desperately to do a better job of finding these youngsters earlier. And the main rationale that I would give, it's because of accessibility. Accessibility to the environment. Deaf-blindness limits that, limits the degree to which kids can access information from the environment, limits the ways in which they can access the environment. So we're all about trying to increase accessibility. Because in case of a youngster who has deaf-blindness, 2 of that child's 3 distant senses are impacted. The third one, smell, okay? Many kids with deaf-blindness, lots of kids with charge, they don't smell. So then they're 0 for 3 on distant senses. And that distant sense means exactly what you would infer from common language use. They're the senses we use to collect information from things that aren't right here, that we can't have direct, concrete experience with. So depending on the degree of loss in vision and hearing, that learner must rely more and more and more on contact senses to learn about the world and the people and the things in the world. And the contact senses are taste and touch. Well, you can learn things through taste and touch, right? But you surely can't learn the magnitude and variety of things through taste and touch that you do through your vision and hearing. And this whole question of when we identify children who experience deaf-blindness, it is very positively correlated with the reduction in the negative impacts or the negative influences of those sensory losses on their future development. So if we can increase accessibility, we're going to increase information gathering ability. And in my opinion, and this is research as well as my opinion, learning is all about information gathering. All right. So some statistics. This is from, again, the National Center on Deaf-Blindness. In an ideal world, young children with dual sensory loss will be identified and referred. You know, if we just identify them, not a big deal. We have to identify them and refer them for support services as early as we can. That's our goal. That's what we're striving for. That's why you're all taking an hour and a half out of your super busy schedules to be with us today, right? I found this next point very interesting, that for several recent years on the National Deaf-Blind Census, only approximately 6% of that total count of kids birth through 21 are in the age range of birth through 2, only 6%. And I go, wow. And please don't think I'm pointing a finger at you. I'm not pointing a finger at you and saying you need to do a better job. I'm saying all of us collectively, we all need to do a better job. We need to find these kids sooner. We need to refer these kids sooner. We need to get supports in place sooner so that the trajectories of their development will be more positive. On this page, I have information specifically about Montana. I do understand from Ellen and Kim and Teresa, we have folks from around the country, which is awesome. That's great. But Montana invited me to do this, and I'm going to focus on the state of Montana. But I encourage you, if you are a practitioner, if you are a family member outside the state of Montana, look up the stats for your state. Look them up, because I only looked up, and I'm going to talk to you about the Montana statistics. Well, during the year 2019, the Montana Deaf-Blind Project provided support services of some kind to 43 different individuals. And as Ellen told you, they serve kids from the time they're born or identified through exit high school, right? Up to 21 years of age, potentially. And their official census count was 37 individuals. So in the second poll, Kim, if you want to go ahead and launch that second poll, what I want you to do is to tell me, of the 37 reported in Montana in 2019, how many of those kids were 2 years of age or younger? 0, 2, 4, 6. What do you think? And once again, Kim, when you think we've got about 3/4 or 80% of the respondees having answered, if you would display the answers, please.
Will do. This is Kim. We're at about 65% and rising quickly.
Great. Take a guess, folks. This is low stakes assessment. There's no consequence if you're not correct.
Okay, 5 more seconds and we'll close the poll.
Okay, honestly, I hope not everybody is correct. It won't help me make my point. Well, the vast majority, or the largest group, a little over 1/3 of you said 2. And I say, ding, 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 that is correct. There were 2 kiddos reported on the 2019 census. I wish the 11% of you who said 6 had been right. To address the 29% who said none, I did in my conversation with the folks, with the ladies from the Montana Deaf-Blind Project in preparation for today, I asked them about the most recent statistics. And for 2021, because I could only find what's on the website, and that's 2019 because COVID has interfered with reporting and everything else. But for 2021, it seems as though the Montana census for kids 0 up to 2 years of age is going to report 0 kids. So sadly, that 29% of you, if you're thinking of the last year, you might be right. With the anticipation that there will be 1 child reported who's 2 years plus, but not yet 3. Okay, thank you, Kim. My point, please understand, I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, and I'm not trying to say you need to do a better job. I'm trying to say we all need to do a better job. If there are so many kids, 3 to 5, elementary age, secondary school age, surely some of those kids develop acquired deaf-blindness from an accident, from a trauma, from an illness, absolutely. But many of those learners in those school age groups, they have had sensory loss, hearing loss, vision loss, much earlier than they were caught or identified, and we just have to do better, in my opinion. So I think we all need some markers about what we can look for, what we can expect. I've created just one slide, this one on some vision markers about, quote, typical development. The next slide is some hearing markers from, quote, typical development. You early interventionists, I'm sure you have multiple developmental checklists, lists of milestones for vision development, hearing development. There are so many resources out there on various deaf-blind projects websites, on the NCDB website. I've just pulled some of the things that I think are most significant, so that if you're observing a young one, if you, a parent, have a young one, you can look at some of these things and say, for example, if your new baby, your newborn, doesn't stare at really, really bright, shiny things, or doesn't blink if the light gets super, super bright, that might be a red flag for you to say, that doesn't seem right to me. Maybe I need to watch her vision. Maybe I need to talk to somebody. Or by the time a child is in the range of up to 3 months, the child should begin to stare, to focus on an object, something really brightly colored. It's like, what is that? I see that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the color is. Or begin to shift gaze between you as a care provider and a favorite toy, or you as a care provider and the family cat, or those kinds of things happen. And the ranges, the distances on which kids can focus, those change over time. And there are lots of resources out there to guide our work, so that if little ones don't hit these markers, these various markers, and there are many others, I realize that. I tried to pick out some that in my mind are the most important, okay? That most often are waving a red flag at me to say, Susan, pay attention. This child is 5 months old, 6 months old, and he doesn't seem to visually react when his primary caregiver or his daddy comes to pick him up. It's just, there's no different reaction to that person than other people. That's a signal to me. And so I hope that this might be a resource for you. I've got the same thing in terms of hearing, but I did take this one on up to 24 months. And the age ranges are bigger, as you can read them. I'm not going to read them to you. Once again, I think it's an issue of, from the first 3 months of life, if there's a super loud sound, if it's a sonic boom, if it's thunder, if somebody dropping pans in the kitchen right by that baby, there should be some kind of a startle or a jump or a change in alertness. There should be some degree of comfort noticed by a very familiar voice. If you don't see those things, write them down. I'm not saying jump on it, say, my kid's deaf, I gotta do something, I gotta get a hearing aid. That's jump shark. I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying make notes of those things. It's those little observations where you write down those little anecdotes that make a difference when an early interventionist or another person is going to work with you to try to complete a formal assessment to see if your child or a child in your service area, in your school, in your preschool qualifies for services. You have to have those data, and those observational data are very, very important. I think in the 6 to 12 month category, the notion of noticing when there's a new interesting sound, that's really important. Or searching, even if the child doesn't look because he has blindness, orienting his body to try to find where that new different kind of noise is coming from. Some understanding of some common words, that should be happening in the 6 to 12 month range. Make notes. That's my takeaway from those slides. Please make notes. For the next few slides, I want to talk with you about newborn hearing screening. Again, I'm not going to read everything. You have this as a resource, but the American Academy of Pediatricians, AAP, Pediatrics, I think is the official name, estimates that 1 to 3 of every 1,000 newborns experiences some degree of hearing loss. So hearing loss really is the #1 disability that's present at birth in the United States, all right? And of those kiddos, 95% of them ultimately are identified as having a long-term hearing loss, all right? Newborn hearing screening takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It's often done in a hospital setting, but it isn't necessarily required in a hospital setting. We'll look at that for Montana in just a second. Newborn hearing screening may be completed when the baby is asleep or when the baby is awake but quiet. It can't be completed if the baby's agitated or crying or moving around a lot. 1 to 2% of all newborns do not pass an initial screening. That doesn't mean there is necessarily an existing loss. It just means there needs to be follow-up and a second screening repeated. And different states have different requirements. Some states require a repeat screening in 1 month, some in 3. So find out what your state has to say, all right? The reason it's so important that we pay attention to the results of a newborn hearing screening that is now mandated across the United States is if there's an identified loss, then that family and those early interventionists can work to help that child be fitted with hearing aids. I've seen some of the tiniest little hearing aids in my life. Or if the hearing loss is sufficiently severe, the family might opt for a cochlear implant. Back to Montana. A universal newborn hearing screening program was established in Montana in 2001. In 2007, the law was amended, and the requirement in Montana now is that a newborn or early life hearing screening must be completed within the first month of life. And the Department of Health is responsible for enforcement of that law. How much oversight truly occurs, I don't know, but that is the way the law is written. The 2007 amendments also say that if a child is identified as having hearing loss or likely hearing loss, that little kiddo must receive further screenings and, if necessary, support services within 3 months of the time that child was born. So Montana is very proactive, saying we must put services in place within the first 3 months of life. Not all states are that proactive. And the Montana law does address protocols, referral, reporting, audiologic assessments. Many states don't. So once again, I would say, please check your state and find out what your state requirements are. I have some pictures. Some of you might wonder, how in the world do they do hearing screening with little babies? If you're an audiologist, I apologize. You know this. You maybe do this. The first method is called an automated auditory brainstem response, AABR, and it is conducted the way it's shown in the picture right here. These really soft earphones are placed on the baby's ears. You'll notice that on the child's right ear, the headphone is marked with red. The left is blue. That's a typical color pattern for audit reporting hearing results, hearing test results, so we don't get the earphones on backwards and then we're reporting that there's a unilateral or a one-sided loss on the right when it's really the left because the earphones were put on wrong. So right is red, RR, that's how I remember that. So when these earphones are placed on the baby's ears, 3 electrodes, we can see one of them are placed on the baby's head, and then clicks or tones are played through the earphones, and the electrodes pick up how the auditory nerve and the brain respond to those sounds. And we do get some false results. Sometimes kids seem to pass when they shouldn't. Sometimes they're inconclusive results, and the main thing that I can say is then follow up and have that baby screened again. The second method of newborn hearing screening is called autoacoustic emissions. You go, it's a big giant word. It measures echo, all right? It measures the echo and the movement of the inner ear mechanisms in the baby. The way it's done, a teeny tiny probe, and you can imagine how small this must be because it's going to go in the baby's ear canal, and it's placed in the baby's ear canal. There's no pain. There's not even, shouldn't be discomfort, and it measures what response the clicks or the tones produce in terms of sound waves in the baby's inner ear, all right? And then they repeat it. They do it on the right side, and then there's a probe placed on the left, and they get the measurement from the echo of those sounds in the workings of the baby's inner ears. Kim, you want to launch poll number 3, please? This is a question about newborn hearing screening, and in the question, you'll see EHDI. Again, maybe some of you folks from EHDI are here. I'm sure early interventionists know what that is, but I need to explain to you, EHDI stands for Early Hearing Detection and Intervention. This organization works very closely with a parent organization called Hands and Voices. Parents, if you have a baby, a youngster with hearing loss, you might want to get yourself aligned with Hands and Voices. It's a very meaningful, resourceful, helpful parent organization. And I'm asking you on here, what are the accurate statements about universal newborn hearing screening? And you can mark 1 or more than 1. And Kim, I'm going to leave it to you again when we have about an 75 or 80% response. If you would post the results, please.
Susan, this is Kim, and I will most certainly do that. We're at about 52%, so I will keep watching.
Thank you. Again, folks, it's low stakes. Don't worry about making a mistake. We're just curious to know what you've picked up so far, what you know already. Just trying to emphasize the really important points.
And this is Teresa. If you're having any questions about how do I connect with my state's Hands and Voices or EDI coordinators or any of those pieces, don't hesitate to reach out to your state deaf-blind staff. They're going to know those connections for your specific state.
Absolutely. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you.
Susan, this is Kim, and we are stuck at about 74%, so I will go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Great, let's go with it. Awesome, 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 awesome. This looks really good. Eddie does recommend that every newborn be screened prior to discharge. That is absolutely correct. Hospital discharge is what it's referring to. 91%, 3 cheers to all of you. And the other answer that is absolutely correct is the final one in yellow, that 59% of you answered correctly, that Montana requires infants be screened within the first month. And you say, well, that's not consistent. Eddie says prior to hospital discharge, and I'm saying that's true. Eddie says that's what they recommend. Montana state law says it must be the first month, all right? The other 2 answers are not entirely accurate. The main thing, Eddie recommends retest within 3 months or sooner. They don't want 6 months to go by if you have an uncertain result or if you have a negative result. It's like, we've got to get on this. We've got to find out. So that is why that answer is not correct. And there are false results, which is why the blue one, the third answer, there are results that are just wrong, that doesn't pick up a hearing loss, particularly if it's a mild loss. It doesn't mean that you've cleared that hurdle and the baby's hearing is typical. So Kim, Teresa, this might be a place to stop. We're kind of going to shift gears. Do you have any questions in the chat that we need to address about the topics we've covered so far?
You couldn't have set me up better, Susan. I do have one question that I was just waiting to jump in with. Do the
Okay.
2 types of hearing assessments identify different types of hearing loss?
That is a great question. It's a great question. So kudos to whoever submitted that. No, the answer is those 2, the AABR as well as the autoacoustic emissions, they screen for the same types of hearing loss, and they are generally believed to be equally sensitive to hearing loss. I have read something that seems to indicate the AABR might have a little bit higher reliability. In other words, pick up on maybe some milder losses that aren't picked up by the autoacoustic emissions. But in terms of whether it's a conductive loss, a sensory neural loss, a mixed loss, a 1 ear loss, a 2 ear loss, both tests should be interchangeable in that regard. So that's a fantastic question. Thank you. Anything else at this point, Teresa?
I do not. Thank you. So, I did have a comment here that autoacoustic emissions will not pick up a neural loss, and OAE will not pick up an auditory neuropathy.
Okay, I appreciate that. If I misspoke, the auditory neuropathy, I should have clarified that, and I apologize for my failure to include it. So thank you for keeping me in line in that regard. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Are we ready, Teresa?
Ready, Susan. Thank you.
Okay. On the NCDB website, there are many different types of conditions, syndromes, hereditary conditions that are associated with deaf-blindness. I listed just a few because, again, we could spend 3 hours talking about associated conditions and risk factors. You say, why did I choose these? I chose these because I think they're the ones that may be, well, for one reason, they're 2 of the most common causes of deaf-blindness from birth. They're things that might be more familiar, things about which you've heard. They occur with a higher prevalence than a lot of the other syndromes do. Extreme prematurity associated with retinopathy of prematurity, kids who are just born too early, kids with charge syndrome. Now, this doesn't mean that if a baby is premature, he's going to have a dual sensory loss. It doesn't go that way. It's just saying the child who's extremely premature, born at 24 weeks, 26 weeks, is at a higher risk for a dual sensory loss. But there's no guarantee that a baby, even born at 20 weeks, is going to have a dual sensory loss, all right? Similarly with all the other conditions on this list. a significant number of learners who have charge syndrome do have a hearing loss and a vision loss, but not nearly all of them. So just because a learner might be identified, a child, a baby might be identified with one of these conditions, it doesn't mean that child is going to have a dual sensory loss, okay? It's just, this should put you on alert. Watch the vision, watch the hearing, watch the vision behavior, watch the hearing behavior if you hear that the learner, the baby, the toddler has one of these conditions. I included Cytomegalovirus Cmv because it's a virus we hear about a lot. The majority of kids who have CMV do not have deaf-blindness, but some of them do, and I think it's a condition you'll hear about. Cornelia de Lange syndrome is a fairly common syndrome. If you hear about a baby in the hospital or an infant has had a brain bleed, or you might see it in medical records as IVH, intraventricular hemorrhage. Again, the existence of a brain bleed, say that 3 times fast, brain bleed doesn't guarantee vision and hearing loss, but it increases the risk. Or if you hear somebody say, I never heard of that condition before. Like you say, Batten syndrome. Well, you know, so-and-so's baby has Batten syndrome, or so-and-so's baby has Patau syndrome, or trisomy 13, trisomy 18, and you go, I never heard of that before. It should put you on alert to learn more, to find out, because it's those lesser common disability conditions that often are associated with deaf-blindness. I think that it's important that we, as people who work with families through deafblind projects, other deafblind organizations, we be aware of these kinds of things and other syndromes too, because there's some genetic testing that can identify prenatally that a baby has one of these conditions. Again, no guarantee the baby's going to have deaf-blindness, but you can start being proactive with talking with the family, or the family might want to talk with you to prepare for setting up, to making sure you're attentive and planful with assessment in advance of the birth. So we just try to get a leg up on possibly identifying a kiddo who needs supports. So how do we find these kids? Bottom line, how do we find them? We got to find them. The Council for Exceptional Children, major special ed professional organization in our country, recommends that practitioners, all of us, all of you, related services, early interventionists, special ed teachers, gen ed teachers, administrators, all of us, that we work as a team with the family, and we work as a team with one another, because not one of us has all the information. Like, thank goodness, thank you to the person who called me out and said, Susan, you should have said it doesn't catch auditory neuropathy, and I should have said that, but I can't do it by myself. I need a team to gather assessment information. I think the second point here is really most important to me in my mind, and this is my practice and my experience. I think it's borne out in the research, but it's not said in this way. I think we need to promote families' confidence, to help them know that we think they know their child the best, especially if it's a newborn, a young toddler, a young child. That family knows the child the best. The family knows the child's strengths, the needs, the capacities. We need to give that family confidence and build their competence to help us put together a meaningful assessment. And by doing that and giving them confidence, we are strengthening their family relationships. We're strengthening their relationships with us, and hopefully we might be improving their relationship with their child. I think it is important for us to have some knowledge of the milestones for typical development. We talked about that very, very quickly and very roughly. Early interventionists, I'm sure you have your favorite checklists, your developmental scales. That's super. I just would caution all of us to not rely on one resource because they're not consistent with one another all the time. I think as professionals, we need to review medical records of a very young child that is suspected of possibly having dual sensory loss. Especially, we need to know the results of the newborn hearing screening, because that's a given, should be a given. We need to ask families, again, build the fact we have confidence in them. We can't access those records without the family's permission. I know that, but it's a way we can build relationships. I think we need to be aware of syndromes and conditions and accidents that often are associated with deaf-blindness. But the last two things, bottom line, we got to get information from family members and key care providers. If the child goes to daycare, preschool, we got to get information from those other people, and we need to observe. And we need to observe carefully and attentively and planfully. I think we need to just listen. If you hear somebody say, well, Stephen only weighed 2.5 pounds when he was born. To me, that goes, Susan, pay better attention. Again, there's no guarantee that a baby who's 2.5 pounds at birth is going to have sensory loss. But that child is at a higher risk for sensory loss because he was so tiny. If a child spent 7 weeks in the NICU, if a mama says, well, sometimes she seems to see things, but sometimes she doesn't. Even if we just follow up and say, oh, wow, Mom, thanks for telling me that. Like, what is it that you think she sees? Is it a particular color that she looks at? And if Mom says, well, I don't know, and you say, well, that's fine, but could you watch that and get back to me about it? Or like, does your baby seem to look when there's movement involved? If there's a moving object or a moving stimulus, or if it involves the dog touching her, or, you know, what is it that she seems to see and what doesn't she see? Or if somebody says on your team, somebody says, I've never heard of this syndrome, have you? To me, that says, Susan, do your homework, look this up. Maybe this situation, this syndrome is frequently associated with hearing and sensory loss, hearing and vision loss. Somebody says, well, his ears really are funny looking and he has lots of ear infections, but the doctor says his hearing is fine. I say, I don't know. I think it's important that families listen. I'm reading from the bottom up, like the captions. You need to listen to medical professionals. Of course you do. That's why you go to them. That's why you see them. But if you're a parent and something just doesn't sit right, if you're an early interventionist and something just doesn't sit right, I say go with your gut and request an evaluation. Because if you hear, well, his ears look really strange and he has lots of ear infections, but they say his hearing's okay, I want more information than that. And I think comparing with older siblings, cousins, friends, kids, that's okay to some degree if those developmental milestone charts that you're using have a range. But if they say the child should crawl by X, that makes me really anxious because kids develop differently. You all know that. You don't need me to tell you that. So we need the child should crawl between X and Y. I feel better about that, okay? And I would encourage you, especially in the case of babies who are born very prematurely, you want to do what's in red. You want to calculate that child or measure that child's achievement of projected developmental milestones, not by the birthday, the day the kid was born, but by the true birth age. Let's say you've got a baby that's born 28 weeks and a child is supposed to achieve something in typical development, whatever that means, by 3 months of age. Well, the baby that was born at 28 weeks was born 12 weeks early. That baby was supposed to cook in the womb for 3 more months, right? So it's, especially with those early milestones, you don't want to measure, did that child hit that developmental milestone at 3 months? It's really 3 months plus the 3 months he was supposed to still be in utero, and you want that baby to hit that marker by 6 months. Now, again, it's not that quantifiable, it's not that exact, but I want you to please think in terms of true birth age and not the day that a baby is born. So what do we need to do? We need to be authentic. When we're assessing kids, we need to be authentic. What does that mean? It means it has to be real. It has to be meaningful. It has to be significant. And to have an authentic assessment, we need to give that newborn, that baby, that toddler, that child more than one opportunity to show us he sees something, how he sees something, to show us he hears something, how he hears something. You don't want to display an object 12 inches away from a kiddo, and if he doesn't look at it or respond to it, it's like, well, couldn't see that, put it away. No, move it to a different range. He doesn't see it 20 inches till he's maybe 5 months old, right? Move it closer. If that doesn't work, move it to the side of the field and see what happens. Give him repeated opportunities. If you want to see if he reacts to a new kind of music, rap music with a real heavy rhythm, you want to see if he reacts to that. Don't play it one time. Play it multiple different opportunities at different volumes, from the left side, from the right side. It might be that when you play it that one time, he's feeling sick, or he's feeling sleepy, or he's feeling scared because he doesn't know what's going on. He needs multiple opportunities. And when you're doing assessment, what I'm going to advocate is that if you can do an assessment and involve a parent or primary caregiver, especially if it's with newborns, infants, young toddlers, have the interaction conducted by an individual who's familiar with that child. And you can coach the parent on saying, okay, mom, she's on the floor and she's in her carrier. What I want you to do is go behind her and I want you to bang on this pan. And then you watch the child to see how the child responds. You say, okay, mama, what I want you to do now is I want you to go over here to the side and shine the flashlight and real fast movements up and down to see if she notices it, or whatever the tasks are. I'm just making up examples, right? But if the person that is actually interacting with that baby or that very young child is familiar, you've likely reduced the stress, you've increased the familiarity, you're more likely to get significant, reliable, meaningful results. My best story about this, and then I need to step it up a little bit. I worked with a little guy, his name was Austin. This is a true story. Austin had very serious vision and hearing losses. I worked with him in a research study and I went into his home. And he was not a tiny baby. He was 4 years old when I first met him. He had been identified as deafblind, but we were trying to put supports in place and he was in a research project. And fast forward the story, it took me 4 days back to back to back to back of working in the same room with him and his mother before I could even touch him in concert with his mom, before he would scream, cry, and run out of the room. But yet, if I coached his mom, and you might say, well, he didn't even know you were there. And I'd say that's true. But when we're trying to figure out what supports are there, the kid needs, it was important. So I told his mama what to do, what to say, what to try. And eventually, but it took hours and hours and hours before I could interact with him in any meaningful way. I'd say ABCs are critically important to authentic assessment. ABCs, all right? Appearance. Look at that kiddo's eyes. If they look cloudy, if the pupils are different sizes, if they're very red, if they're very watery, if they don't focus together, one turns in, one turns out, they do different things. Look at the appearance of the child's ears, externally as well as if you are qualified to look internally. Look at appearance. Again, it's no guarantee of hearing loss or vision loss, but it can give us clues. Look at behaviors. Behaviors. Look at the behaviors the child routinely demonstrates. And you say, Susan, you just had to put this in here because it's communication. And I say, I know, I own that. But behaviors are communication. So if the child is routinely throwing things, pushing things away, crawling away from things, or crying, if the child is very young, but when new stimuli happen in the environment, he's crying, or on the converse, he's just still. There's no notice, there's no startle, there's no attention, there's just lack of observable behaviors. That's behavior. And that's partly what I'm saying. Make notes. And that you say, Susan, you're supposed to tell us about assessment to evaluate and identify kids. And I'm trying to the best I can, because the best assessment with newborns, young toddlers, young children is observational informal assessment. watch, look, be on alert, write things down, look for patterns in your notes. Look at the C's, the context. Does the child behave differently when he's in the living room where it's noisy and the TV's on and his 3 brothers and sisters are there than when he's in his bedroom with his mom? Does he react differently when the family dog is on the couch beside him? Does she react differently when there are service providers in the home or there's a caregiver and when parents are there? Is it better or different in the morning as a result or in comparison to the afternoon? Context is important. You make your notes. You look for patterns in your notes. In the field of deaf-blindness, the practice that we're going to talk about for the rest of our time today is called child-guided assessment. I think this is borne out in the literature. There are lots of articles published about child-guided assessment. It is one of the most authentic practices for completion of assessment with a learner, young child, baby who is suspected of possibly having deaf-blindness. This comes out of the framework from Jan van Dijk in the Netherlands, who was very instrumental in developing ways to intervene with learners who had deaf-blindness as a result of rubella in the 1950s. He worked with Kathy Nelson out of the state of Utah, and Kathy just retired last year, and other colleagues as well, but it's primarily attributable to Jan van Dijk and Kathy Nelson as a way to assess kids who might have dual sensory loss, to reduce their stress, to yield more reliable, valid information and assessment results. It relies very heavily on concentrated observation. Again, I'm saying watch, 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 think, read, watch, make notes. Look for patterns in your notes, because we want to try to watch these kiddos in environments and routines that are the least stressful as possible for them. You as the assessor, if you are interacting with the child, you need to try very hard to get attuned to that child, incorporate the child's preferences, motivators, interests. If you can be like a third party and coach a parent or a more familiar individual, maybe there's a care provider who's been associated with an early intervention project that knows that child very well, but isn't as expert as you from a state deafblind project in terms of qualifying a child for deafblindness. Let that other care provider, that service provider, be the person interacting with the child. You be the coach, you be the observer, you be the note taker. That works. But bottom line, whoever is the person interacting with the learner, the baby, the toddler, follow the kiddo's lead. Child-guided assessment isn't just a name. It really is. The child takes us through and shows us things. This is one of my favorite quotes. I wish it were mine. It's not. It's Jan van Dijk's. What we're doing in assessment is we are inviting the child out of her body, out of his body, to join us in the world. We have to get that child out of his internal self to know how he is able, in what ways he is able, to what degree he is able to interact with the environment, things in the environment, people in the environment, and build connections with those things and people in the environment. I think it's very important that as we're working on child-guided assessment, we remember that many kids, not all, but many kids with dual sensory loss, they lack curiosity because they aren't extrinsically motivated. They aren't motivated or tempted by the bright, shiny things in the environment visually, by the funny making sounds and objects that make noises in the environment, because they don't see and hear them the way we do. Or if they do see and hear them, their sensory input might be so distorted that it really isn't motivating. It might even not be a neutral. It might be too noisy, too uncomfortable, to the point that those environmental stimuli have a negative effect. So we have to rid the environment of a lot of visual stimuli or auditory stimuli to calm it down so that we can get at what the child really is able to do and to what degree. The thing we're going to talk about when we get to the memory aspects, kids with deaf blindness aren't able often to anticipate or predict what's going to happen, and that's important as well. So there, in the child-guided assessment that Van Dyke and Nelson put out there, they say there are 8 areas to assess. I'm telling you, I'm talking about 10, but that's my interpretation of their work. And the difference is what I've put in red on your screen right now. Jan Van Dyke and Kathy Nelson talk about sensory learning channel as a singular area. And if you take those 3 and collapse them into 1, then you have 8. I think it's critical when we're conducting an assessment for early identification of possible deaf blindness. We pull those apart and we look specifically at vision, we look specifically at hearing, we look specifically at touch because they're different. And we need to look at those in conjunction with the other 7 areas. So we're going to take a quick walk through these 10 different areas and then we'll wind it up. The first one is biobehavioral state, or called behavior state. I had the privilege of working for many years at the University of Kansas with Dr. Doug Guess on behavior state research projects. Behavior state is defined as the level of an individual's general arousal. There's a range of behavior states, from active, alert, ready to engage, through being dazed, being drowsy, being asleep, being agitated. Research varies in numbers. In all the KU studies, we talked about 6 states. Some more current studies talk about 9 states. Some researchers in England talk about 7 states. The number doesn't matter to me. It's this notion of behavior state. When a newborn is first born, behavior state is controlled by his or her neurological system. And over time, as reflexes are integrated and the neurological system matures, the child gains more voluntary control over behavior state. But if kiddos have a significant neurological disability, it's still going to be a lot of internal control. Now, the studies that we did at KU, and it's another of the electronic documents that you have available in the handout section of GoToMeeting. It's actually titled Learning Environment Characteristics Checklist. And this is old, but I still think it's good. The front sheet of that handout is a checklist, and the subsequent 6 or 7 pages, I think, are just ideas of different kinds of stimuli that can have an influence on behavior state. And in the behavior state studies we conducted, the research showed us that if we planfully and purposefully engineered the environment, we could positively impact behavior state. We could move kids out of a dazed or drowsy behavior state into a more alert state. We could move kids who were very agitated to a calmer, even if it was a drowsy kind of semi-sleep state, we could calm down the agitation by engineering the environment. And I hope that that might be something. We're not going to go through it together very much. Kim, if you want to launch the 4th poll, that'd be awesome. And I just want you to take a guess. And if you've got the environmental check sheet up in front of you, you'll know the answers, right? But mark all of the following that apply about environmental variables that might positively impact a young child's behavior state. And Kim, you know the drill. I'm not going to coach you anymore. How about that?
This is Kim. I hope I've learned, but we'll see. We're up at just over 50%, but we'll give a bit of time. So
you're my partner. I just got to check on that, you know.
You wanted to make sure I was here, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to hear your lovely voice and quit listening to myself.
Okay, we'll give about 10 more seconds.
Okie doke.
Okay, Susan, I'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Thank you. You guys are great. You don't need me. You are absolutely correct. All 4 of those things might, with certain individual young ones, influence behavior state. The number of people in the immediate social environment. You want to look at peers versus adults. We had one little one, her name was Barry, and she was so alert when she was preschooler, when other preschoolers were within 3 feet of her, and when those kids were not in her immediate space, you might say they were in her personal space, she was asleep. And we had a really hard time waking her up. Smells, aromas can really make a difference. I say, think about burned microwave popcorn, right? You remember, powerful, right? Can affect a child. Change in orientation. We worked with a young man named Luke who used a wheelchair, and his chair would tilt. And when we had him sitting basically 90 degrees straight up, it was really tough. We had him in side lying, we had him prone, we had him in supine, we tried a lot of different positions, but when he was in his chair and we would tilt him back about 45 degrees, bang, that was his best alert state. And we could make progress with him. So I just encourage you to look at that handout. There's gazillions more than these 4 that can, with certain children, influence their behavior state. Thank you, Kim. If you would move, thank you. These are some questions you can ask. To what degree does the child seem able to control his behavior state? Or does it seem like his body's not in his control? How much time is the child spend in a state of quiet? How much time is the child actively alert? How much time is the child agitated? You can't help kids learn much when they're agitated. If it's self-injurious behavior, stereotypy, crying, they're not going to learn in that state, right? You know that. You don't need me to tell you that. And when you begin an assessment, what's the current behavior state? If the kid has fallen asleep and it's a newborn, young, 12 to 18 months or less, I say give it up and try it another day, because you're not going to get reliable, meaningful, authentic assessment. All right. The second one of the 10, and I will say that from here on through the rest of the child guided assessment slides, I've taken the main point of the questions from Jan Van Dyke and Kathy Nelson. I've reworded them some, but they're basically, the questions are attributable to those individuals. The behavior state ones, I made them up because I've done a lot of work in behavior state, but these questions are primarily all attributable to Van Dyke and Nelson. And so on each slide, I've just given you some questions, and it's basically as if certain people, certain objects, certain things approach the child, does the child seem like to lean into that activity or withdraw and pull away from that activity? Turn away if it has motor ability to turn away. If you've got a newborn that doesn't roll over yet or can't get away from something, then they screw up their face and start crying, right? But if the dog comes or the cat, I need to have a cat example for the cat people. If the cat climbs in the child's lap, does the child lean into the cat or try to pet the cat? Or does the child give you one of these, like, get it away from me? That's the approach withdrawal thing. What people, what objects, what activities? If you're like doing something really fast where you're pushing the stroller and you want to see if it's fun, so you're going to push it really fast and the kid starts screaming or crying. He doesn't like to go fast, so you want to go really slow. You were trying to create a game that might be fun, right? Didn't work. Write it down. It's still really important. Quick, abrupt movement, nada. All right, he sensed it, he didn't like it. What behaviors does a child give you to say, I've had enough, I don't want to do this anymore? For those of you who also work with older kids who do use sign, what's the best way they can tell you I'm done, right? They close their eyes on you, right? So how does this toddler say, I've had enough, I need to get disengaged now, I need to rest, I need to sleep, I've had enough, get away from me? Very important questions. Does the child lean in or approach the activity or withdraw from it? As far as the next 3, which again, Van Dyke and Nelson say 1, I say 3. When we're talking about the sensory learning channels, it's very key that even during an assessment process, you're trying to maximize what the kid can show you he gets and can use and can perform in terms of vision and hearing and touch, right? All of those things. So the main thing I would challenge you with about vision and hearing and touch, it's the first point on all of the next 3 slides. Examine the patterns of engagement or disengagement with visual stimuli. Are brightly colored things engaging, or is that when the child turns off? Are things with movement engaging, or is that when the child turns off? And does the child use his vision in combination with other senses? Does he want to look at something and also touch it and also lick it, or also put it by his ear to see if it makes noise, or does he just look at it? Very important. How does the child generally relate to visual information? And does he take in information? Like, is it meaningful? Like if he's in a room and his favorite brother approaches him and the kid like smiles or starts to get agitated or reach out, he's taking in that visual information. He's not just maybe seeing it. He's using it to say, ooh, this is your brother that you really like, and maybe he's going to play with you. And that's what I mean by take in information. It's not just, oh, I see it, I'm going to do something with it, and I'm processing it. Those are important notes to make. You have another document that in your handout section, it's called Observational Vision Assessment. And it is an appendix of several pages out of a chapter from several years ago, but it's an observational assessment about vision that I think is awesome, and I hope that you will find it useful. Watch, ask questions of the family, write it down, look for patterns. And by now you're saying, can't you say anything else? And I guess I sort of can't. As far as hearing, I'd start with the same thing. Examine the child's auditory engagement or disengagement. Like maybe when music's playing, the kid might rock or whatever, or when the music stops, the rocking stops. Or if somebody calls his name, there might be some notice or some alerting, or maybe there's no response. That's what I'm saying, engagement or disengagement. That constitutes your early assessment. Write it down, look for patterns. And does the child use his hearing in combination with other senses, vision, touch especially? So it's the same questions. How does the child generally relate to auditory stimuli? Does he use auditory stimuli to take in information? Like I say, respond to his name in a positive way, as opposed to just, well, maybe he hears it. You know, the hearing test says he can hear that range of sound, that volume of sound, but I don't reflect on that. I don't react to it. There is another electronic document I've provided for you called the FAPI. That is what it is listed as in the handout section. This is a resource I had with a project I was using with a project I had in North Carolina, and it has 7 categories of sound. And you know there are differences in sound awareness, sound localization, sound discrimination, auditory memory, all of these things. It's a 2-page electronic document that breaks these skills out in 3-month intervals and provides examples of them. And I thought that that might be a resource that will be helpful to you as you try to complete assessment. So let's go to touch. Same first question. How does the child engage or disengage with touch? If the child touches you versus if you touch the child. If you touch the child, does he lean in? Does he then put his hand on your hand? Or if you touch him, does he like, get away from me? How does that child relate to tactile information? All the different kinds of textures, smooth, rough, soft, hard, heavy pressure, light pressure. And does the child use that information to mean something to him? Or does it just, he experiences it, but he doesn't seem to respond? Like if you try to play that game, mom's hand, your kid's hand, mom's hand, kid's hand, is it just like nothing? Or when mom puts her hand and then helps the kid put her hand, then does the child make an attempt to play too? I think it's very important we remember that the child's early expression of memory usually incorporates two things. And this is typical development as well as kids who experience deaf-blindness. Earliest expression of memory likely incorporates tactile experience and movement aspects. Tactile and movement aspects of the child's experience are some of the earliest memories. Okay, and I am watching the time, ladies. I'm sure you're freaking out a little bit, but we've got 5 more to do. I think we're gonna make it. The 6th category is orienting responses. And this is kind of like a 2-part. This is a twofer. It's not, again, just that I noticed something. This relates to what I said about vision, hearing, touch. Does the child actually take in and use that auditory, visual, or tactile stimuli for orientation? Not only an awareness of the stimuli, but also somehow directing attention to that stimulus. It might be that the child exhibits a response that orients to the sound, or orients to the person coming toward him, or orients to the dog that ran past his leg, or it may be just a cessation of activity, or with a physical withdrawal from the activity. That is an orientation, but it's an orientation that says, no way, don't want it, don't like it. But that gives you great information about what the child sees or hears and feels, right? Even those negative things, and again, you're not going to impose them on the kid all the time and do punitive kind of measures, but it's important for us to know, to be able to tease out what he hears and what he sees and how well he hears and sees and what he does with what he hears and sees. So those kinds of things are very important, as well as what triggers an orienting response from the child. Is it more visual? Is it more tactile? Or is it more hearing? Is it combination? Is it equal? Or is it none of the above? Maybe it's movement. Maybe it's vestibular. We don't know. Number 7 is memory. Kim, if you don't mind, I'm going to make a autocratic decision and say we're not going to do poll number 5 because I think we need to get through the last 4 of these variables, if you're okay with that. It's just the reinforcement that earliest memory incorporates tactile and movement aspects of experience. Really, really important. We need to remember that, all of us do. Does the child habituate to familiar stimuli? And that means, does he get used to it? Like, he notices things when they're new, but it's like kids get tired of toys. Kids get tired of foods. They get bored with them. So that might be one way a child habituates, but another way is if a child is very defensive, visually, tactily, auditorily, how does that child desensitize to that novelty? And how long does it take you to help that child desensitize so that they can eat more food, so that they can tolerate more different textures, so they can respond in a positive way to more types of visual stimuli? That is all associated with memory. And memory is linked to cognition, is linked to communication, is linked to sensory function. Early in this presentation today, remember we said that when you're talking with very young children, all of these aspects intertwine, and we take them apart to talk about them, but we can't take them apart in real life in terms of how they influence kids' behavior. Part of memory, do I remember the people that are important in my life, right? Do I react differently to people who are familiar and unfamiliar? Do I notice if stimuli change or not? Do I show you that I kind of can anticipate what's going to happen? When you're changing my diaper, after you pull up my pants, do I know that you're probably going to pick me up? Or if you don't do that and you do a different action, do I notice? that you didn't do what you usually do, if there's a mismatch in those expectations, if there's a mismatch, do I notice that? That can be a real signal about memory development, which is linked to use of sensory information. So let's move on to number 8. We're almost done, and we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. Social interactions. When a person approaches that newborn, that infant, that toddler, does the child orient to that person? Does the child react differently with those primary caregivers or primary support people with whom she should have bonded, should have attached? Does that child engage in turn-taking games? Well, does the child start the turn-taking games? Or does the child only engage if somebody else starts the turn-taking games? Like, I touch your face, you touch my face. I touch your face, you touch. Who initiates them? How many turns will the child tolerate before the child goes, I'm done, that's enough, I'm done? Only they can't look at you and say, I'm done, that's enough. They're gonna go to sleep, they're gonna pull away, they're gonna cry. How many turns? Everybody communicates. Please interpret the child's behaviors as communication. Write them down, look for patterns. Your observations constitute your assessment. Does the child initiate communication? And if he does, is it through signals or gestures or sounds that are unique to him, like pounding on the TV, or some weird noise that we don't know what it means? Or is it conventional, like ba 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 and bye bye and those kind of things? Is it conventional? Is it idiosyncratic? What does he do consistently? Does he do things with different partners, with his brothers and sisters, as opposed to his parents, as opposed to his grandparents, as opposed to his service providers? All those things, write them down, look for patterns. That's how you're going to hone in on what he sees, how well he sees, what he hears, how well he hears, how he uses his sensory information. The last one, because I need to wind this up, and I'll point you to what the last few slides include. Problem-solving behaviors. This is really a much, much, much higher level skill. It's number 10, but it basically is all those Piagetian sensory motor precursors to development. Does the child understand cause and effect? Means ends behavior, like means ends. If he can't reach something, but there's a chair, does he know if he can climb up on the chair, then he can get the thing? Does he know what common function is for common household objects? Does he stay with a task? Does he persist for more than 3 seconds? Drop it, go to another thing. Does he stick with a task for an extended period of time? How well does he maintain attention? Those are the foundational behaviors to being able to solve problems. And I think it's important we take notes and look for patterns. The rest of the slides, I have just, I think 5 or 6 more slides, are just resources for you. So Teresa, maybe it would be preferred if we use the last few minutes we have to see what questions there are first, and then I can run through the slides, but people can read the resource slides without me reading them to them. Do you have any questions at this point about child-guided assessment?
I have just a couple questions that are together, and I want to, if I have that opportunity, bring it forward. Back when you were talking about slide 20, diagnosis conditions frequently associated with
That's what I'm sorry.
I know I'm way back there. But within that, 2 questions came up that were closely tied to that, and I think you can quickly answer. One being, does it matter which grade? This is when we're talking about bleeds. Does it matter which grade for IVH?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second being, what is the correlation between severe HIE and vision loss?
Okay, let me answer the first one, and I'm going to need some clarification on the second one. Yes, the higher the grade, the more severe the brain bleed, the higher the occurrence or the likelihood of occurrence of sensory loss, the occurrence of more more global, widespread damage to the brain. Again, we can't guarantee that, you know, a grade 3 bleed is going to be associated with this list of characteristics, but the more severe the bleed, the more prolonged the bleed, the higher the grade of the bleed, the more the likelihood of impact in cognitive function, some kind of sensory function, some kind of motor function is going to increase, and literature will support that. I hope that answers your question. If not, please type it back in the chat. And I'm sorry, Teresa, I didn't understand the second question.
So it's looking for that correlation between severe HIE, which is hypotic ischemic, and I just knew I was going to butcher it. That's why I was doing that.
Okay.
And vision loss. So basically that correlation between that impact and vision
Okay.
loss.
I'm going to just tell you true. I'm not sure. I don't know that answer. If Teresa will send me that, I will check on it. I think I know what to say, but I am not confident, and I don't want to give you misinformation. So if the person who typed that in the chat would make sure that you either email me directly or give your email to Teresa, so when I get an answer to that question, I'll get you the information, because I don't trust myself to give you accurate information today, and I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
The last piece I want to share with you, thank you, Susan, so much, is I love what she said about helping parents with their confidence and that they know their baby best. It's one of the best things I've heard in a long time about providing support to families, and now I need to pass this over to Kim.
Thanks, Teresa. Susan, do you have anything you want to say on your final slides before we do our closing remarks?
Just super quickly, you have 2 slides about formal assessment instruments. Sometimes some state projects want a measure with some kind of standardization. The MacArthur-Bates inventories, particularly the first 2 on this slide, words and gestures, words and sentences, I've used. I found them to be very helpful. The ages and stages questionnaires, I've heard about them. They're published as the gold standard for developmental screening. I personally have not used them, but if you need a formal questionnaire, you might check it out. The rest of the slides are resources, and I've included, they're from the National Deaf-Blind Center website. It has information about EDI, Hands and Voices. They have a toolkit, that's the toolkit for early ID and referral. There is an early ID and referral guide, a 35-page guide. Lots of, there's another handout that I provided for you that I talked about a little bit, that hearing, and lots of state deafblind projects will put things, and I just chose these because I didn't want to use Montana, but this is an example from Washington. I've also used stuff from Indiana, Illinois, Nevada. I've used stuff from a lot of different systems, but there are checklists about signs, symptoms, and risk factors, and developmental screening checklists. These are free on the web. You just have to hit the various state deafblind projects websites, and you can find all kinds of information. That's my email. That's my phone number. Believe it or not, people, I tried to practice, and so I get this in the time and not be so rushed at the end. And I tried and tried, and I apologize that we're in a big hurry right now, and I'm sorry. But reach out to me with your comments through email, through phone, and I'm going to shut up now. Thank you. Thank you for your time today, everybody.
Thank you so much, Susan. And the great news is that we have part 2 of the early identification series. That webinar is titled Bridging Early Identification of Deaf-Blindness to Effective Intervention. And Susan will be back with us on Thursday, March 3rd. That's from 12 until 1:30 again, Mountain Standard Time. You do need to register separately for that webinar. Registering for today's session did not automatically register you for the March 3rd one. So if you like what you heard today and you want to hear more and you want to figure out how do you take what you've learned in assessment to that next step, please sign up for our next webinar and share the invitation with others you think might benefit from the information. I have put in the chat box the link to our short evaluation. Again, that link will come out in our follow-up emails to you about an hour from now, and again tomorrow, just as a reminder, because we really do value your feedback. So please take time to complete that short evaluation for us. The recording from today's session will be posted to the training archives pages from the Montana Deaf-Blind Project and also the Transition and Employment Projects. Both of those websites are in your chat box. It takes about 2 weeks to get the captions edited and everything loaded together and then posted to our websites. But feel free to share with anyone you think might benefit from the information. Share those links. Again, it can take up to a couple of weeks. For those of you who are in Montana, we'll be sending you an email inviting you to partner with us to explore the issue of under-identification in more depth, and to collaborate about ways that we might work together to increase the early identification of kiddos with dual sensory impairments in Montana. So be watching for that email. Again, that's for our Montana audience members only. And with that, I would like to thank Teresa and Ellen for your co-moderation assistance. I would like to thank our captioning professionals with their speedy fingers today. My goodness, your hands must be so tired. I'd like to thank all of you audience members who joined us and stayed with us and posed questions and comments. And especially Susan, I would like to thank you for the fabulous information and for your time. Have a great afternoon.
May I make a real quick comment?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry.
Kim and Ellen and Teresa share the evaluation results with me. They're really important to me. And especially if you plan on coming back on March 3rd, if there's something in specific you want me to follow up on, I don't have that presentation fully together yet. So if you've got suggestions for what you want me to talk about, please put it on your evaluation and they'll let me know. And I just want to thank you all again. Now I'm going to shut up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Take good care. Stay warm. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.